Thank you for hitting play on Evil Lies podcast. Welcome to Season 1, The Boy in the Map. As you listen to the series, be aware several quotes have been read using AI to improve the listener experience. Any clips that are not AI generated will be prefaced with the source of the recording. If we do not state the source of the recording, we want to make it clear that it is not the voice of the individual that is being quoted. That individual has either requested to be anonymous or has not been involved with our investigation. We will be discussing documents, videos, and photos collected in the official investigation. All of those materials that are in our possession, including those from the official Lowndes County Sheriff's Office investigation file, will be available to view on our Patreon at www.patreon.com/evilliespodcast. Pertinent materials for each episode are kept on the public feed in the respective post for that episode, but if you'd like to support our show with a monthly pledge, you will unlock access to hundreds of additional materials. To make it even more worth your while, we have also created exclusive original content, such as side story episodes about any related cases which are mentioned, and a second mini podcast focusing entirely on the fictionalized Ebony articles written by Fred Rosen.
Just found a body in the old gym.
My daughter texted me and said they found a murdered student at Lowndes High just now in the basketball room. How horrible.
I wish I could tell you more about Kendrick Johnson. Maybe because this case has been so controversial and turned into a cause for so long, it's hard to actually find KJ at the heart of it. This project is years in the making, thousands of hours, tens of thousands of documents, photos, reports, videos, and comment sections. The only thing I couldn't talk your ear off about would be Kendrick. At 17 years old, he was affectionately known as KJ by his friends, family, and eventually the world. By all reports, he was a sweet kid that loved his family, helped his parents, worked hard at school, and excelled in football, basketball, and track. One of the earlier films I watched on the subject, and honestly the only one that really personified the memory of KJ, was called Unfortunate: What Happened to Kendrick Johnson. I've been unable to reach the creator, but if you happen to be the creator or know them, please get in contact with me at evilliespodcast@manslaughtermedia.com. KJ's grandmother, Pastor Barbara English, says in the film that Kendrick was a quiet, peculiar boy. His mother, Jacqueline Johnson, who goes by Jackie, said that in addition to being a great athlete, he was funny and playful. The baby of the family. It seemed he had a gentle disposition, painted with a handsome face. Young ladies in the film spoke of how they would have been interested in dating him, describing him as cute and easy to fall in love with. I'm going to play a clip from the film. The man speaking is Kenneth Johnson, Kendrick's father.
Telling me all these stories. Dad, that he this most famous person everyone loved. Man, I got this girl, I got that girl, man. All the girls want me, Dad. And I said, man, you ain't all that, man. He said, I'm trying to tell you, man. And then he be in the mirror, hey man, I need to buy this for my face. I need to buy this for my face. Man, I can't have that stuff in my face. And so I say, man, so he wasn't like most kids. You know how most kids when they're at the mall or something, they kind of like a little ashamed to walk with their parents because their parents. And Kendrick wasn't like that. Kendrick, man, he tell me how, it is that when he go places, how people react to him. I said, no, he ain't got it like that. And man, I took him to the mall. He convinced me to go to the mall with him. From the time we walked into the mall doors, all the way to the store we went to, and all the way back out the mall when he walked me back to the door because I was leaving. Man, every girl it was in that mall, Kendrick, and they'd run up to him, hugging. I mean, all the way through these different women. And they just all the way through the mall, all the way like he's some superstar. I'm like, then we got back out to the door. He said, didn't I tell you?
The future looked bright until Kendrick Johnson didn't come home from school on January 10th, 2013. At first, Jackie thought that he just stayed after school to watch the basketball game, but hours went by without a word from KJ. Calling KJ's phone only connected Jackie to her husband, Kenneth, who was in a different part of the state for his job as a truck driver. Kenneth had recently lost his phone, so he was borrowing KJ's till he could replace it. He also hadn't heard from his son. Jackie proceeded to call any family or friends of KJ she could think of, and no one had any information. Not knowing what else to do, Jackie and her daughter, Kendrick Johnson, drove over to KJ's high school, and they found all the school doors locked and no signs of anyone. Jackie knew something was wrong. At 11 o'clock that evening, Jackie called 911.
Round 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, I'm calling. My son had one that come home from school today, and he still haven't got here.
Okay, so you have not made a report yet?
What's
your address? Okay, what's your son's name?
Kendrick Johnson.
How old is he?
He's 17.
You said he did not come home from school today?
And we thought he was at a basketball game, and some of the kids say they thought they seen him, but then some of the other kids say they didn't see him, so I'm not sure what's going on. And he's never not came home.
So you've never had problems with him?
He ain't. If he would stay out, he would either call me or my husband or one of my children, but he ain't called nobody. Nobody's heard from him.
Does he have a cell phone number?
Do he have one? No, he don't have a cell phone.
All right, what is your name?
Jacqueline Johnson.
And your phone number, Miss Johnson? Does he have any kind of medical problems or mental problems?
No.
All right, we've got an officer on the way to make that report with you. Is this going to be a house or a duplex that they're coming to? All right, we've got an officer on the way to come make that report for you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
According to the police report by Sergeant Craig Roby, he arrived at the Johnson home at approximately 12:30 a.m. on January 11th, 2013. When asked when she had last seen her son, Jackie explained that she was a bus driver for the Lowndes County Transportation Service and that KJ would ride with her to the school every morning. The last time she'd seen him was at 6:30 a.m. when she'd driven her school bus route and dropped him off at the high school. According to Jackie, the dispatched officer tried to reassure her that her son was probably just out with a girlfriend or some friends and that she shouldn't worry too much yet. And in the case of many teenagers, that sentiment would probably be entirely accurate, and they'd stroll through the door ready to be grounded before the sun was up. But Jackie said she knew her concerns were more than justified. Jackie explained to Sergeant Roby that KJ knew that on a school night he had to be home by 11:30 at the very latest, and that he had never been out later than that. And as far as girls went, Jackie was confident that Kendrick didn't have a girlfriend, because he was dedicated to his athletic career. Officer Roby stated in his report that their search turned up nothing, and he made contact with Jackie again at 4 o'clock the following morning. Jackie stated that she'd still not heard from KJ. The report ends with a description. Kendrick Lamar Johnson, black male. Birth date October 10th, 1995. 5 foot 10 inches, 165 pounds, slender build, shoulder-length dreadlocks, brown eyes, and black hair. The next step would be to find out when KJ was last seen at the school. As fate would have it, Jackie had an appointment with the school guidance counselor bright and early on the morning of January 11th, 2013. The following is a 911 call made by a student while Jackie was sitting in the guidance counselor's office.
Come to Lowndes High School now. There's a dead body out here.
Okay, where at, sir?
Lowndes High School in the old gym.
After emergency vehicles started flooding into the school parking lot, it was explained to a terrified Jackie that they had found a deceased student in the old gym. According to Jackie, the officers on scene told her they hadn't made an identification yet and that she needed to remain calm. Frustrated, and maybe hopeful, Jackie asked if anyone else had reported their child missing. I don't know what response she got when she asked this, but I do know the response she got when she asked the officer if the body in the old gym had dreadlocks. Yes, he said. It did.
We begin tonight with a developing story out of South Georgia. We've been following it all day. Lowndes County Sheriff Chris Prine confirms a student's body was found this morning at Lowndes High School. I'm Greg Angel. Thank you for watching Mika's Off Tonight. Deputies were called out late this morning to the school on Norman Drive. That is where we have WTXL ABC 27 Ty Wilson live for us tonight outside of Lowndes High School. Ty, earlier today, the sheriff told me that they are considering this as a possible homicide. Where's the investigation at this point?
Greg, I can tell you that just within the last 15 minutes, we saw several vehicles with investigators inside coming on and leaving the campus as well. Around 3,000 students go to Lowndes High School, and I can tell you that it has been a very long, difficult day for students here, for parents that have kids that go to school here, and administrators as well. Kind of recapping just a bit, Lowndes County Sheriff says early this morning a body of a student who goes to school here was found on campus. Sheriff Chris Prine says they are investigating this case as a possible homicide. Katina Petrov has a son that goes to school here at Lowndes High School. She says the situation has hit too close to home.
Everybody always says, that it won't happen to you, but it just, all of these shootings and bad things keep happening with school over and over, and it gets closer and closer, and now it's happened here.
After the body was found, the school was locked down. Now, despite the circumstances, Sheriff Chris Prine has said that he believes that the children that have been out here all day long, of course they're gone now, he says they were safe. He wanted to get that message out to parents. For now, the investigation into this case continues. Live in Valdosta, I'm Ty Wilson, ABC 27, dedicated to you.
Immediately upon their arrival, the police began investigating the crime scene and interviewing any students and faculty that they could. But immediately wasn't fast enough. Within minutes of the body being discovered, rumors about a campus killer were flying on social media. There were rumors that he had been shot, that he had been stabbed, that he had been found naked. One probable Rob Zombie flick fan even went so far as to say that he'd been suspended on meat hooks from the ceiling of the gym. The most pervasive and widespread rumor, which would be an understandable mistake had anyone been able to see his face, would be that KJ had been severely beaten. The fact is, it would be nearly impossible for students to have any insight into the state of the body. KJ was discovered lodged inside the opening of a rolled-up wrestling mat, which stood up against several other mats. From the top, looking down, from the perspective of an onlooker, the only visible part of the body would have been the legs up to the hips. A major piece of false information that was being spread around right from the discovery was that KJ's arms were pinned to his sides in the mat. This rumor has been widely repeated, even as recently as a couple of years ago, when one of the top podcasts in the industry covered this story. During this episode, we will not be covering much of the facts outside of what is commonly known, but to be clear, KJ's arms were not straight and at his sides. His right arm was bent with the bicep going along his cheek, the inner forearm against his forehead, and the outer forearm against the floor. His left arm was at his side with his elbow bent and his hand loosely curled under his chin. The identity of the student didn't take long to make its way through the school. It's unclear how they came to know who the student was, but it could be that they knew who Jackie was, and they could tell by her behavior that she knew it was her son. It didn't take long for leads to take a Shakespearean turn, and rumors swelled that KJ lost his life in an altercation with another student over a girl. At about 2:30 that afternoon, police received a report that a student named Bruce had posted on his Facebook page, quote, "When you start messing, the goons' bodies start showing up." That is an exact quote. The report stated that Bruce had made previous posts in which he said he was, quote, "going to start killing them off one by one," and suggested that KJ had been killed for messing around with Bruce's girlfriend. Given that the newest post appeared on the same day they found KJ's body, police couldn't ignore the threatening tone of the sentiment even without seeing the post for themselves, because the Facebook account had already been deactivated. When questioned, Bruce did admit to the police that he did have a Facebook account, and he had deleted it, but we were unable to find any evidence specifically of whether he admitted to making those posts or not. Unfortunately for Bruce, the posts were up long enough for a group of KJ's friends, along with his sister Kendrick Johnson, to find out about them, drive over to Bruce's house, and beat him to a pulp. He ran into a neighbor's house where he did call the police, and when police arrived, Bruce claimed that the vigilante group had beat him up, quote, "using a pistol with a silver grip." According to the police report from the incident, when the officers asked Bruce why he thought they were doing this, he replied,
"Man, how do they know all this and y'all don't? Y'all are supposed to be on top of your game."
Officers noted that Bruce's injuries were not consistent with his account of being hit with a gun, and no charges were ever filed in this incident. Bruce was found to have played no part in KJ's death. The investigators had already determined that KJ hadn't left school on January 10th before being found on January 11th, and Bruce could prove he was nowhere near the school on either day. However, love knows no bounds, as they say, and just because we've closed the books on one jilted lover doesn't mean the rumor mill couldn't find another. As if young men have nothing to fight over but young ladies. At 6:40 p.m. on the day the body was discovered, before the name of the deceased student was even announced, Lowndes County Sheriff Chris Prine released a joint statement with Lowndes County School Superintendent Wes Taylor. It read, quote,
"Although the exact cause of death is yet to be determined, as of this stage of the investigation, nothing has been discovered to indicate foul play was involved. An autopsy will be conducted on Monday by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Medical Examiner's Office to attempt to determine an exact cause of death."
I doubt they could have known what a lasting effect that simple statement would have in the trial of public opinion. Many who read it assumed they were saying that the sheriff's office had phoned it in and ruled KJ's death accidental. I want to make it clear that that was not true. The case would remain open and continue to be investigated for several months. The following clip was collected during a recorded interview we had with Captain Stride Jones, who was the face of the Kendrick Johnson investigation in Valdosta on behalf of Sheriff Chris Prine.
There was no decisions made early on as to this is a crime, this is not a crime.
I suppose now would be a good time to mention we will be including several audio clips from interviews with people close to the case as we get deeper into our investigation. So you're going to want to stay tuned for those. The day after the discovery, January 12th, during a press conference held by the family, the Johnsons expressed concern that they had not been allowed to identify KJ's body. They stated that KJ's sister Kenyatta had been shown a picture of a shoe and asked to verify whether or not that shoe belonged to KJ, which Kenyatta said it did. KJ's grandfather, Eddie Tooley, said that he'd been shown a low-quality image, probably a printout of a photo of the body in the old gym. He told the police that he thought it was KJ, but he told the media that he wasn't sure. Frustrations were also expressed that the sheriff's office had declared this an accident before they could possibly have known that. But as I mentioned, that was simply the first fit of outrage stemming from a misunderstanding of the police statement released the previous evening. Eddie Tooley also made a bombshell statement to the press that he had heard the son of a, quote, GBI agent was involved in the murder. For anyone who doesn't know, GBI stands for Georgia Bureau of Investigation. They were involved in the initial investigation from day one, and the autopsy took place in their medical examiner's office.
It was said that he had got in a confrontation with one of the GBI's son that goes to that school. And some years ago, and they said that wasn't settled yet. So, and then I was told, we don't know for sure, but I was told that boy had something to do with it too.
On Sunday, January 13th, KJ was officially identified in the press as the student who was found in the gym. The Valdosta Daily Times also reported that Sheriff Prine again said he did not suspect foul play, but had declined to say why he thought that. That evening, KJ's father, Kendrick Johnson, was permitted to view his son's body in the Valdosta Regional Crime Lab. We couldn't find the original clip, but in an interview with an independent news channel in Valdosta the following day, Kenneth allegedly said that after seeing the body, he believes there's no way that KJ's death could have been an accident, because KJ had worn braces for years and he had perfectly straight teeth. Yet when Kenneth looked in KJ's mouth, he could see that his teeth were crooked and one of them was pushed backward. At 6:05 p.m. on January 14th, the following statement was released by Sheriff Chris Prine.
An autopsy was completed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Medical Examiner's Office today. During that exam, no indications of injury that would have caused the death of KJ Johnson were found. Additional testing will be completed in the near future in an attempt to determine the exact cause of death. During the investigation, investigators have learned that KJ Johnson went into the gymnasium and appears to have climbed on top of the mats which were standing upright. At some point, KJ Johnson either reached into the center of one of the rolled mats or fell into the center opening of the mat and became lodged. Investigators found no signs of a struggle having taken place. Investigators with the sheriff's office have and will continue to interview students and friends who may be able to provide information.
Investigators say preliminary autopsy results show Lowndes High School student Kendrick Johnson had no visible injuries to his body, and at this point they are still ruling out foul play.
Investigators say it appears Johnson was on top of mats that were standing upright when he possibly fell or reached inside the hole of the mat to get a shoe and got stuck.
From the evidence that we found, that this is not a murder. It appears just to be a terrible, terrible tragedy that resulted in a young man losing his life.
KJ's parents, however, were absolutely certain that KJ had been murdered and did not buy the accident claim at all.
How can you fall over in a wrapped up mat?
Kenneth Johnson, Kendrick's father, thinks someone killed him.
Whoever done this to my son, be punished.
On Monday, January 14th, 3 days after KJ was found, KJ's grandfather, Eddie Tooley, released a video in which he repeated his claims from the January 12th press conference, adding that the GBI agent's son had killed KJ because they had an ongoing feud that stemmed from a physical altercation they'd had on a bus. Eddie Tooley's video has since been removed, but regardless of if he actually used the student's name in the video, with social media, everyone at Lowndes High School and in the community already knew who he was referring to. Brian Bell, 15 years old, was a fellow sophomore and football teammate of KJ's. His father, Rick Bell, was not a GBI agent, as Tooley had stated in both the press conference and the video. He was actually an FBI agent. From that day forward, Brian Bell was the prime suspect in the death of KJ Johnson, at least on social media and in the eyes of the community. The story goes that sometime before, Brian and KJ had gotten into a fight on the way to a football game. There were a lot of rumors about how the fight started, such as Brian being upset when KJ outwitted him in yo mama jokes, or Brian having pulled KJ's dreadlocks and KJ retaliating. We'll get into a little more of what exactly happened on the bus in a later episode. Important to note about this incident, though, because of the school's zero-tolerance policy regarding violence, both students were not allowed to ride the bus back home. They needed to find their own rides. I'm going to withhold some details for now, as the details have been spared in the media so many times before, but at the end of the night, Brian went home with his parents, and KJ was brought home in a police car. In the words of his outraged mother, quote, like a criminal. During the week following KJ's death, investigators spoke to nearly every student that had known KJ or had been in the vicinity of the old gym on the last day that he was seen. Every student except for Brian Bell and his brother Brandon Bell, age 18. Their family had told the investigators that if they wished to speak to them, they would have to do it through their lawyer. The following is what Captain Stride Jones had to say about this.
They were never interviewed, no ma'am. But I think it's important to understand why they were never interviewed. I mean, under our Constitution, any person has a right to remain silent. And that remaining silent is not an indication of guilt. It's just simply what their right to do is. And they invoke that right to remain silent through their parents and through their attorney. So, I mean, obviously we had to respect that decision.
As you can imagine, this didn't do the Bell Boys any favors in the court of public opinion. You will find out just how harmful it was to their reputations before we're done. The Johnson family, as well as a group of Lowndes High School students, petitioned the school to allow them to hold a candlelight vigil in honor of the memory of KJ on school grounds. They were shocked and disappointed when their request was formally denied by the school administration. Details of the school's decisions were not released at the time, but their reasoning becomes evident later on. On January 16th, the vigil was instead held at Sean W. Sanders Park, which is located a few blocks from the high school. I don't think calling it a vigil provides an accurate description of the magnitude of this event. A more appropriate term might be rally. The event was covered by the Valdosta Daily Times. Kenneth Johnson took to the stage and said,
"Give it up for my son."
With his wife and other sons on stage with him, he called for KJ's murderer to be brought to justice and criticized both the Lowndes High School administration and the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office.
Lowndes High, it's time to step down. Sheriff Prine, let's go. My son is gone. He was in school care. If you're not going to protect my son, you're not going to protect the other kids, and we have too many other kids at this school.
His battle cry inspired rabid applause from the audience, followed by guttural sobs of sympathy as Kenneth shared a heartfelt story of a young KJ accompanying him on his routes as a truck driver, where his fellow drivers affectionately referred to KJ as Kenneth's shadow.
They would ask, "Where's your shadow today?" I carried my son all over the United States with me.
Kenneth ended his speech with a final plea.
We want justice for my son. You might as well stand up because the truth is going to come out.
The audience gave him a standing ovation. KJ's funeral was held on January 19th, 2013. Despite the shocking state of the body, it was an open casket service. More than 1,000 people attended, and Harrington's funeral home, owned by a friend of Eddie Tooley, Antonio Harrington, provided the services at no charge to the family. According to Lee Touchton,
the Johnsons claimed that Lowndes High School sent no one to KJ's funeral when in fact there were teachers, school administrators, and board members at his funeral.
In attendance were dozens of Lowndes High School students, Superintendent Wes Taylor, Principal Jay Floyd, as well as two of the school's coaches, one of whom made a speech praising KJ's athletic ability. Let's shift our focus to the investigation, which had already begun. The first-time County Coroner Wilbur, or Bill Watson, stated his grievances with the quality of the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office investigation publicly was in the Valdosta Daily Times on January 17th, less than a week after KJ's body had been discovered. His three main grievances were that he thought the crime scene had been tampered with, the body had been moved, and that he had not been called to the scene for 6 hours after the body was discovered.
Well, I didn't know what to think.
According to Georgia law, Coroner Bill Watson should have been contacted immediately. Kendrick's body was found at about 10:30.
I was notified at 4:15.
In 2013, and to this day, per the Georgia Death Investigation Act, the coroner or county medical examiner of the county where the body is found or the death occurs must be notified, and that a medical examiner's inquiry be made in all deaths that occur in Georgia which meet certain criteria. I will provide a link in the show notes if you're interested in what that criteria is. There is no specification as far as when the coroner must be notified, but it is implied it should be immediate. In addition to the issues at the scene, he reported that Kenneth Johnson had been allowed to view KJ's body after he had put his coroner's seal on the body bag, even though that seal is not supposed to be broken between the time a body is examined by the coroner and the time it reaches the state medical examiner. I couldn't find the exact law on this for Georgia, but I was able to find it for several other states, as well as several cases in Georgia where the coroner's seal being broken became an issue in the investigation. So I'm going to assume that the law for Georgia is the same. Wilbur said,
"This was not fair to the decedent, his family, and the citizens of Valdosta and Lowndes County, Georgia. And it's wrong as rain. You may not want me on your crime scene, but it's a law. It's not something you can change your mind about."
In any investigation, the body is a piece of evidence, and that seal is proof that the chain of custody has been maintained. The Johnsons' attorney, Shaveen King, said that when KJ went to the crime lab, he had clothes on, but when he came back, he didn't. When King and Jackie went to the crime lab and asked about KJ's clothes, the GBI said that they didn't know where they were. Watson's complaints about the chain of custody can easily be seen as founded when incidents like this take place, giving him additional influence over the followers of the Kendrick Johnson case. Now, none of this is to say that Watson thought that the investigators were being negligent to cover up a homicide. In fact, he did agree that the death had been accidental, but it didn't exactly sound that way to the public based on his objections. In the months that followed the initial discovery of KJ's body, friends and family of KJ utilized the internet to share information and express their disbelief in the officials' versions of events. Kenneth Johnson used the platform to dispel what he believed were false notions in regard to KJ's death. For example, he announced that he did not believe that KJ could have fallen into the mat, saying that his son's shoulder width was 19 inches, but the opening of the mat was just over 14 inches. Kenneth even conducted his own reconstruction, posting a picture of himself trying to fit into one of the exact same type of mats that KJ was found in. In the picture, where he can be seen on his hands and knees at the opening of a rolled-up gym mat, his shoulders are clearly wider than the opening of the mat. You can see the picture for yourself by visiting our public feed on Patreon. Starting on April 9th, 2013, the Johnson family and several local supporters began staging daily protests outside the Lowndes County Judicial Complex. This was an attempt to force the Sheriff's Office, or the GBI, to provide answers after not hearing any updates for several months. The protesters held signs depicting things like photos of KJ and slogans such as "Honk your horn for KJ" and "Justice for KJ." Some even brandished signs with what has become the iconic post-mortem photo of KJ, which, if you haven't seen it, is probably too gruesome for public display. It is available on our public Patreon feed, along with several other post-mortem photos we'll be discussing later. Please be advised before viewing, they are graphic. Some of those posters said things like, "Does this look like an accident to you, Sheriff Prine?" When asked by reporters covering the protests how they had come to obtain the post-mortem photo of their child, the Johnsons refused to say where the picture had come from. Jackie Johnson is quoted as saying,
"We want justice for KJ Johnson. I want the people to know that my son was murdered at Lowndes High School, and we will not stop until we have justice. We'll be out here every day until someone gives us some answers and the people responsible are behind bars."
Sheriff Chris Prine stated that his office had been completely cooperative with the GBI and that they were just waiting on the GBI to release its findings in KJ's death. Before long, law enforcement not only had the Johnson protesters to contend with, but a string of angry local parents demanding a stop to the protesters showing the graphic images in plain view of any children. In response to the flood of complaints, Brian Childress, the Valdosta chief of police, said that even though the photograph that the Johnsons were displaying was graphic and difficult to look at, the Johnsons were breaking no laws. Throughout that month, the number of people involved in the daily protests swelled, inflating to a crowd of hundreds of people on the weekends. Kenneth Johnson had no doubt their protest would draw a following, stating,
"The community response has been very good. It's the response we expected. Everyone knows that this wasn't an accident. We've had a lot of strangers, complete strangers, come out to support us. At this point, everyone becomes family."
On April 25th, after 16 days of protesting, 5 members of the Johnson family, including Jackie, Kenneth, and Barbara English, Jackie's mother, created a human chain blocking the entrance to the courthouse. By doing this, they officially crossed a line with their protesting into breaking the law, and the sheriff's office was compelled to act. Kenneth would later claim that their purpose in doing this was to get arrested and bring press attention to the case. His master plan went off without a hitch, and all of those involved in the human chain were arrested.
"We're not going to stop until they tell us what happened to my child."
A South Georgia woman whose son was found dead inside a rolled-up gym mat at Lowndes High School, now in jail along with her husband after a tense protest in Valdosta. Family and friends of Kendrick Johnson marched to the Lowndes County Judicial Complex, but they were quickly escorted to jail.
Today, the family was trying to put more pressure on investigators for information on 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson's death. They blocked the entrance of the courthouse and were arrested for it. Deputies aren't releasing details about the investigation until they get the results of the final autopsy to know the exact cause of death.
A champion of the civil rights movement in Georgia since 1963, Reverend Floyd Rose, who will become a major player in this story as we continue, had been very supportive of the family in their quest to find out the truth. The Reverend put up his house as collateral to pay Jackie Johnson's bond. Jackie was released that day, and the rest of the family was bonded out the next day. This didn't really amount to much in the long term, but on January 28, 2015, the members of the human chain were found guilty of obstruction and sentenced to 1 year in jail, but the sentence was suspended as long as there were no arrests within the next year. Speaking of major players, in the Valdosta Daily Times on May 2, 2013, it was announced that Al Sharpton would be visiting Valdosta that weekend in response to the controversy surrounding the Kendrick Johnson case. Al Sharpton has been a dominant force in civil rights, social justice, and police reform, just to name a few, since the 1970s. If you haven't seen any of his political work, maybe you've seen him in one of the movies or TV appearances he has made over the years, such as Mr. Deeds or the TV show Empire. The point is, this was a big deal for the people of Valdosta and a massive win for the Johnson family. Later that same day, May 2, 2013, GBI investigators officially ruled KJ's death an accident. Please keep in mind, I am paraphrasing for ease of understanding, but if you'd like to read the official autopsy report for yourself, you'll find it on our Patreon post for this episode. According to the official autopsy report filed by the performing medical examiner, Dr. Marianne Gaffney-Kraft, KJ's body had no significant injuries. He had no drugs in his system, and despite what could be misconstrued as a badly battered appearance upon his discovery, all of the abnormalities could be explained by a rapid rate of decomposition in an inverted position. The body heat trapped in the space between KJ's head, the walls of the mat, and the floor of the gym would have been what sped up the natural process of decomposition. She included in her report medical literature which states that in order for a diagnosis of positional asphyxia to be made, 3 things are required. 1. The body position must obstruct normal gas exchange. In layman's terms, the ability to breathe. 2. It must be impossible to move to another position. 3. Other causes of natural or violent death must be excluded. All of these conditions had been met. Ergo, the official cause of death was reported as positional asphyxia. The Johnsons' lawyer, Shaveen King, had previously said that if the results of the autopsy didn't come back supporting homicide, that he was going to push for an external audit of the GBI regarding its handling of KJ's autopsy. Whether or not this announcement was followed by a mad scramble by King to have the GBI audited, we'll never know. As far as we could find, there was no external or internal audit at any point. However, a formal request was sent by Kendrick's parents to the Justice Department pleading for them to get involved, citing 3 concerns. That Sheriff Chris Prine's calling Johnson's death an accident was premature, that Lowndes County Coroner Wilbur Watson stated that Prine's findings were premature and that the crime scene was compromised, and that there are serious concerns about the objectivity and competency of those involved in the investigation. The following are 2 newscasts from the day the autopsy results were released.
Lowndes County Sheriff Chris Prine says after an extensive investigation, they had determined 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson died from positional asphyxia. The 17-year-old was found in January of 2013 in a rolled-up gym mat at Lowndes High School. Sheriff Prine says DNA samples were collected from the scene, and investigators interviewed more than 100 people, including students and teachers. Tonight, we're hearing from Johnson's family members. They say they don't believe the findings, and they're now requesting the Justice Department to step in. We're also learning Al Sharpton is now getting involved.
The protest started within minutes of the announcement, but it wasn't until the following day that demonstrators rallied outside the Lowndes County Board of Education building. The rabble hurled insults and accusations at law enforcement personnel who had been dispatched there to keep the peace.
Tonight, the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office and coroner, the district attorney, they're releasing autopsy findings in the Kendrick Johnson case. Thanks for joining us for Bounce News at 7. I'm Rockman Johnson. Now, there was a protest today at Lowndes County High School as the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office released information in the results of the Kendrick Johnson autopsy case, ruling his death an accident as a result of positional asphyxia, which means he suffocated. Now, the sheriff says the investigation was extensive. There were multiple forensic tests, including DNA samples and interviews of more than 100 people. But the family is less than satisfied. They still think that foul play was involved. Now, the National Action Network, which is headed by the Reverend Al Sharpton, has organized a rally for this coming Saturday at Serenity Christian Church in Valdosta. Now, the Reverend Al is scheduled to attend, and tonight via Skype is our attorney, Kwame Thompson, to comment. And on the phone, we have the counsel for the Johnson family, C.B. King from Albany. Counsel Johnson and Counsel Thompson, how are you gentlemen this evening?
Good evening. I'm fine, and you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you both for joining us. Let's start out with you, Mr. King. You are the family's counsel, and we understand that, again, these findings were just released earlier today. What's the family's position on this? They're saying that it was an accident. What's the family saying?
The findings, as expressed in the autopsy report, actually confirm our belief that he was murdered.
What is it in the findings that confirm the belief? I know the family has said this from day one, that they believed that there was foul play at work. What are those things in there, those specific things, if you can discuss with us, that make them believe that this was a murder and not an accident?
Well, I can't express to you everything because we do have to have it confirmed by our experts. But as you've already pointed out, asphyxia, and including positional asphyxia, only means that a person's ability to breathe adequately has been cut off. And one of the major circumstances in which that condition arises is police restraint maneuvers.
Interesting.
And, yes, as a matter of fact, if you were to check certain FBI publications, that point of view would be sustained.
Now, Kwame, I know that you have been monitoring this case with your firm in Atlanta. And initially, when they were looking, the family was looking for the autopsy report to come back, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation was saying that they couldn't at the time because of budget issues. What has caused them to come up with these findings, and what do you think from what you've seen? I know you've had a chance to look at the findings today. What's your take on it from the outside looking at the case?
Well, as I stated earlier, and you and I had this conversation, we believe that the issue about the budget shortfalls was nothing more than a red herring, and it sounded like a cover-up then. The issue that the community, and I'm sure that the family has, is that the sheriff initially stated that there was no foul play, and there were reports that the cause of death was accidental. The sheriff then came back in April and stated that they treat every death such as this as a homicide. And then also, the coroner was not called immediately to the scene of the death. And we know now by Georgia state law, under OCGA 45-1624, it states that where there's a suspicious death, that the coroner should be called to the scene of the accident. And there are a lot of other inconsistencies throughout the record.
Let me ask you this, Mr. King. What are the next steps? Now that we know this has been released, I understand that the Justice Department has been asked to be involved in the case. And of course, there's a rally on Saturday with Reverend Sharpton and the Action Network. What are the next steps that the family's going to take to get some kind of resolution, or at least find out what happened in their eyes to their son?
Well, previously, and that is several weeks ago, we had written the coroner a letter asking him to conduct a coroner's inquest. And a coroner's inquest is essentially like a trial. He has the authority to subpoena records coming from both the sheriff's office and anyone else for that matter, and cause individuals to take the witness stand and testify under oath. What we hope now that the results of the autopsy are in, and pointing out the inconsistencies that were just noted by my fellow counsel or attorney, we think we've got the basis upon which to persuade Mr. Watson, who is the coroner, to convene such an inquest. And then, of course, we will also be submitting the autopsy report to our expert for examination. And by the way, we did, as of yesterday, secure a court order to then exhume the body.
Okay. Well, we'll be following this case very closely. I'm sure that there's more to it. Thank you so much for joining us again. C.B. King, who's the counsel for the Johnson family, as well as Kwame Thompson from Wooderson Thompson Valburn in Atlanta. Again, that's about the Kendrick Johnson case. We'll keep you informed of new developments. Thank you.
May 5th was the day of the Al Sharpton rally. Marcus Coleman, who at the time was a member of Al Sharpton's organization, National Action Network, was quoted in the Valdosta Daily Times.
Do they think we're stupid? That this young black child crawled into a mat and died? I know the autopsy report came out, and we don't care what the GBI results say. We're filing for an independent investigation with the Justice Department. It takes a little bit of time for an investigation. That's not the issue. The issue is with the investigation itself.
Reverend Floyd Rose also made a statement telling the crowd that their fight was likely to be a long one. Quote, "I've come to welcome Al Sharpton and his people. After the celebrity wears off, I hope you understand that this movement has to stay alive." However, Reverend Rose did say something the Johnsons probably did not expect that day.
Well, this church is the center and core of economic, political, and spiritual life of the black community. So it was fitting that we hosted this, period.
What are you hearing? I mean, I've talked to Mr. Tooley, who is the grandfather of Kendrick Johnson. I've talked to both Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. They said they really don't know. What are you, and they're not speculating, but what do you guys think happened to Kendrick Johnson?
Let me be clear. I am not in a position to say that he was murdered. To say that now, given the reports that we have received over the last few days, is to suggest that the coroner, the district attorney, everybody involved in the investigation, including the criminal investigation team all conspired to hide something. I'm not prepared to say that. What I am prepared to say is that what has happened here lies at the feet of the sheriff, who at the very beginning, before there was any evidence of any kind, before the coroner could examine the body, before the medical examiner could determine the cause of death, and before the autopsy was completed, said that it was an accident. That is what caused so many problems. He should have waited and said, we don't know what happened, and we want this family to be patient, and we're going to complete a thorough investigation, and when it is done, we will let you know what happened. That's what he should have done. All this problem lies at his feet.
The only video or audio that we were able to find of the Al Sharpton rally has noticeably poor sound quality and is difficult to understand, so we have transcribed it and used an AI reader to make it clearer. The original can be found on our Patreon. Reverend Sharpton said,
My organization, the National Action Network, got a call several weeks ago about Kendrick Johnson, and they were told that the findings that had been announced by local law enforcement had been done under very unusual and questionable circumstances. The fact that the father of Kendrick Johnson is so determined to get to the truth of what happened to his son really impacted me. Kenneth Johnson has shown more respect than investigators showed him and his family. I'm not a pathologist, I'm not a coroner, I'm not a doctor, but I do have common sense. And something about this case don't smell right. How could they announce that this was a homicide before the coroner even examined Kendrick? Why did it take them 6 hours to call in the coroner when the law says that they're supposed to do it immediately? And how could it be if Kendrick jumped down to get his shoe that they ain't got no shoe? If there was no one else in the gym, then why was there blood on the wall that wasn't Kendrick's blood? So, let me get this right. Kendrick jumped down in a spot he couldn't fit, spread his blood that wasn't his, and took his shirt, shoes, and clothes with him to heaven? I've got more sense than that, and somebody ain't telling the truth. We are going to keep working together with the Johnsons until every one of those questions is answered. If you know anything, please come forward, and if you're scared, we will protect you.
The event held a collection for the Johnson family to be able to offer a reward for information leading to their son's killer. Al Sharpton kicked off the collection with $500 of his own money, and asked as many people as possible to please contribute. According to one of the sources interviewed for the project, about $8,000 was donated that day. In the days following the rally, Valdosta Daily Times letters to the editor columns May 6th through 9th reflected a growing division in the town. Some examples of the questions and statements were, how did KJ Johnson's face come to look like that if he suffocated? I'm sorry for what the family is going through, but I don't really think it's right for elementary school students to be wearing t-shirts with that picture of KJ's face on them. The community should be ashamed of themselves for treating the family disrespectfully. While the Johnson case is certainly a tragedy, perhaps the press and the community should be giving a little more attention to other crimes and murders that are happening in the area. The Trinity Christian Church where the event took place was shoulder to shoulder, with people even standing outside hoping to catch Reverend Sharpton's speech. One of our sources, who was crammed in amongst the masses that day, told me that they had a speaker system set up so that the hundreds of people outside could listen to the service inside. It was evident from the turnout and the cheers that there was uproarious support for the Johnson family. This young man's death would not slip quietly into the murky history of Valdosta, only mentioned to make a political point. The tragic death of Kendrick Johnson has been, and probably always will remain, one of the most divisive cases in true crime history, whether it's been formally declared accidental or not. Before long, the nation would feel that divide, courtesy of CNN. On May 10th, CNN released the earliest broadcast that we were able to find covering Kendrick Johnson on a national network.
I wish this on no one.
Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson knew something was wrong when their 17-year-old son Kendrick did not come home from school January 10th.
Come to Lowndes High School now. There's a dead body out here.
Okay, where at, sir?
Lowndes High School in the old gym.
The next day, Kendrick was found upside down in a rolled cheerleading mat like these.
I just got weak, nervous.
Investigators said it appeared Kendrick, who was 5'10", was reaching for a shoe that had fallen into the center of a 6-foot mat, and he got stuck. A tragic accident.
Said there was no foul play. He had no bruises, no nothing.
Did you believe that?
No,
And you still don't believe it?
no, I don't.
They think the story about the mat is a cover-up.
Well, I didn't know what to think.
According to Georgia law, Coroner Bill Watson should have been contacted immediately. Kendrick's body was found at about 10:30.
I was notified at 3:45.
Lieutenant Stride Jones is with the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office.
It's a very time-consuming process to basically work your way from the outside in. Once our investigators got to the deceased, the coroner was contacted immediately.
The only reason that I was questioning this incident whatsoever was I wasn't called to the scene in a timely fashion.
The Johnsons say the story does not make sense.
The mat is so light, he could have pushed that, just rock and it would have fell over. I tried to get in it. I couldn't get no forward my neck muscles into the mat.
Then there's this photo of Kendrick's face.
As handsome as my son was, then you see him like that, it's crazy. I really feel he was murdered.
The photo has been shared thousands of times online. There's a Facebook page dedicated to the case, and a local rapper has written a song.
I see the sheriff got all the wrong answers. He must be blind if he can't see somehow. We want justice! We want justice!
There are now rallies nearly every day in Valdosta.
No matter who you are, how much money your parents have, the color of your skin, everyone deserves justice. Everyone.
More than 100 days after Kendrick's body was discovered, scores of interviews and hours of investigation. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation determined Kendrick accidentally smothered to death.
We examined all the alternatives that were presented to us, and the only one that fit the physical evidence and the forensic evidence and the testimonial evidence that we received was this is an accident.
Hours after the release of the report,
Ain't gonna let the GBI.
as scheduled, another rally. Victor Blackwell, CNN, Valdosta, Georgia.
During the last week of May 2013, after the GBI officially closed their investigation, the Valdosta chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or the SCLC, began their own investigations at the request of the Johnson family. Lee Touchton, the Valdosta chapter president of the NAACP at the time, headed up the investigation. Touchton became Valdosta's NAACP leader in 2000. She was reelected 3 times and won the organization's Medgar Evers Award for service to civil rights. She is one of the individuals who was kind enough to grant me some of her time to discuss the case.
At that time, I was the duly elected secretary of the local NAACP branch. I had just finished a term as president of the local NAACP branch, and so then I took on the role of secretary.
The SCLC investigation was led by a repeat character in today's episode, Reverend Floyd Rose, who is the local leader of the SCLC in Valdosta. The next major update in the case came on June 6th, when the Johnson family was authorized to exhume KJ's body. Near the end of May 2013, the Johnsons and their lawyers became aware that an EMT with the fire department present on the scene the day KJ was discovered had stated in their official report that they saw bruising on the right side of KJ's face and neck. Given that this bruising was not reported on the official GBI autopsy report, Shaveen King petitioned for KJ's body to be exhumed so a second autopsy could be performed. Shaveen King spoke about this in more detail in a news segment on Bounce TV.
There are new developments tonight in the Kendrick Johnson case. A judge ruled that Johnson's body may be exhumed for a second autopsy. Good evening, Rockman Johnson. Thanks so much for joining. This is Bounce News at 7. Now, controversy has surrounded Johnson's death since January. The initial coroner's report says that Kendrick's death was accidental and he suffocated while reaching for his shoe in a gym mat. The Johnson family believes that Kendrick was murdered.
There were several things that happened, but the most major of which had to do with the release of a emergency medical team report that indicated that there was a right bruise to the, a bruise to the right jaw of Kendrick, something that was never mentioned in the autopsy report. So either the pathologist at the crime lab failed to take note of this injury, or there may have been some other explanation, but it was clear that another autopsy was needed because this kind of injury is indicative of an assault or some kind of combat.
Now, Mr. King, when do you think that the autopsy will take place? I know there are certain steps you have to go through, but when should that happen?
Within the next 10 to 14 days.
Okay, and what does the family and your team hope to find out from this autopsy?
Well, we hope that it will confirm our suspicions that Kendrick was the victim of a homicide and not an accident.
The exhumation took place on June 14th, and the second autopsy was performed the following day. Dr. William Anderson, a private forensic pathologist working out of Florida, performed the autopsy. While the results of the second autopsy were expected in about a month, they were not available until September 2013. However, the public was not kept bored waiting during those entire 3 months. Beginning on August 12, 2013, the popular nationally publicized magazine Ebony began releasing a series of wildly inflammatory articles that portrayed a fictionalized account of how KJ Johnson had died. These since buried but found by us articles have unimaginable consequences in the coming months, and they will come up again and again in later episodes, as well as be covered in depth in our Patreon-exclusive side story, Ebony Lies. The second autopsy was finally released in early September 2013, and let me tell you, it was explosive. You could put this report side by side with the GBI's report, and no one would ever guess they were talking about the same body. In his official report, Dr. Anderson lists the cause of death as, quote, blunt force trauma, right neck, involving right jaw and soft tissues, including the area of the carotid body artery consistent with inflicted injury. Note: unexplained apparent non-accidental blunt force trauma. Further investigation is indicated to determine the etiology of the apparent inflicted injury. What might be even more explosive is what Dr. Anderson didn't find.
It's the second time Jacqueline Johnson cried next to her son Kendrick's grave. The first time he was being lowered into the ground. This time he's being pulled out of it.
Did you ever expect you'd have to exhume his body?
No, I didn't expect to have to bury his body.
In June, Kendrick's body was sent to Florida. The Johnsons hired Dr. Bill Anderson to conduct an independent second autopsy. In that autopsy, Anderson told the Johnsons he'd found evidence that Kendrick died as the result of a blow to the neck and not accidental asphyxia, after slipping into a rolled gym mat at school, as investigators in Georgia had said. But what Dr. Anderson did not find shocked them.
When we got the body for the second autopsy, that organs, the heart, lungs, liver, etc., were not with the body.
The brain?
The brain, they were all absent.
Every organ from the top of Kendrick's head to his pelvis gone, and his family had no idea.
We have been let down again. And when we buried Kendrick, we thought we was burying Kendrick, not half of Kendrick.
I'm not sure at this point who did not return the organs to the body, but I know when we got the body, the organs were not there.
So CNN contacted the two entities that had custody of Kendrick's body and access to his organs: the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which conducted the first autopsy in January, and Harrington Funeral Home, which the Johnsons chose to embalm and prepare Kendrick's body for burial days later. A spokeswoman for the state tells CNN after its autopsy, the organs were placed in Johnson's body, the body was closed, then the body was released to the funeral home. State investigators say it's their normal practice, but what happened after his body arrived at the funeral home was anything but normal.
What was in the place of the organs?
Newspaper.
Newspaper.
Dr. Anderson showed me the pictures of Kendrick's body he'd taken during the second autopsy.
It's a Black Friday ad, JCPenney ad.
Yes.
Stuffing that newspaper in like he was a garbage can inside his body. It's unbelievable.
I'd imagine that that's a different kind of pain.
Yep.
Why do you think that there would be newspaper stuffed in your child?
I never heard of that before. Never.
Neither had the founder of a national embalming academy contacted by CNN, who said it's not consistent with the standards of care in the industry, nor had the president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, who told CNN he's never heard of this practice.
Why would the funeral home discard his organs and stuff them with newspaper?
The question is, why didn't he tell us?
So what exactly did the Harrington Funeral Home do with Kendrick's organs? And why was he stuffed with old newspaper? We went to their office to find out, but their response to us? No comment. However, in a letter to the Johnsons' attorney, Harrington Funeral Home owner Antonio Harrington denies he received Kendrick's organs. He writes in part, his internal organs were destroyed through natural process and henceforth were discarded before the body was sent back to Valdosta. It's another disappointing answer for parents determined to know what happened to their son before and now after his death. And they admit they're struggling.
Unbearable, just about. Only thing that wakes you up in the morning is just to keep pushing.
Victor Blackwell joins us now. This is unbelievable. A newspaper inside this young man's body. I understand there's an investigation into where Kendrick Johnson's organs went and why. What do we know about it?
Well, Anderson, we contacted the Georgia Secretary of State's office because they issued licenses to funeral homes. We wanted to check on the history of Harrington Funeral Home. And when we told them why we were calling, they decided that they too wanted to know where are Kendrick Johnson's organs, and they wanted to know more about this process, this practice of stuffing bodies with newspapers, something that they'd never heard of either.
How was the family's autopsy doctor able to determine the cause of death then?
Yeah, I asked him, if the organs aren't there, how can you determine how Kendrick died? Well, he says that essentially blunt force trauma was not in the organs, it was in the right side jaw, which was actually noted as bruised during the paramedics report on the day he was found. He dissected the jaw, which had not been dissected in the first autopsy, found bleeding under the skin. He dissected the left side as well, did not find the bleeding, and he concluded that that bruising indicated, also with the bleeding, that there was blunt force trauma, that Kendrick took that blow to the neck.
The missing organs provided new fodder for the Johnsons to support their assertions that this investigation had been shoddily done. When they began announcing this on their social media and CNN began reporting on it, wild theories were being flung around about the fate of the organs. The following is a clip of actress Jennifer Lewis confidently spreading her opinion, circa 2021, as fact.
Imagine being the mother of this child, 17 years old, knowing somebody probably rich and white are walking around with his organs. It's not right.
Dr. Anderson states that he can rule out positional asphyxia based on the original autopsy's findings of normal lung weight, and because he was unable to examine the lungs himself, he says that positional asphyxia is not a possible diagnosis. Yes, you heard that correctly. His reason for that was that the diagnosis of positional asphyxia always requires there to be fluid in the lungs, which is impossible to determine without the lungs being present. If you happen to visit our Patreon and take a look at the GBI's autopsy report, which cited the medical literature to back the following assertion, you'll remember that there are only 3 requirements for positional asphyxia to be the cause of death, all of which were met. Following the release of Anderson's autopsy, County Coroner Wilbur Watson was asked by media outlets if the findings of the new autopsy would change his mind about opening a coroner's inquest. He responded that the state had already determined that KJ's death was accidental and there was no suspects. And apart from Dr. Anderson's claim, there was no purpose in having an inquest because there would be, quote, no place for it to go. For anyone who doesn't know, a coroner's inquest is a type of hearing in which the facts are presented to 6 jurors, and they are asked to decide if KJ's death was accidental, undetermined, or the result of homicide. In response to the release of the second autopsy, Lieutenant Stride Jones, on behalf of the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office, said that they stand by the state's original autopsy. In September 2013, the U.S. Justice Department declined the Johnsons' request to open an investigation into Kendrick's death, saying it had reviewed the case file and it did not see, quote, sufficient indication of a civil rights violation. In the U.S., it is the state's responsibility to investigate and prosecute homicide cases. The federal government has no jurisdiction to get involved unless it can be proven that a person's civil rights were violated during the commission of a crime. Also in September, CNN had filed a Freedom of Information request to obtain KJ Johnson's investigative file from the county commissioner. While people were reeling from the results of the bombshell autopsy report, the media was releasing redacted witness reports, crime scene photos, and official police reports, whipping up the frenzy even further. They released the first wave on Tuesday, October 8th, 2013. CNN aired a segment with lead investigative reporter into the Kendrick Johnson case, Victor Blackwell, interviewing the parents, Sheriff Prine, Stride Jones, and former FBI agent turned private investigator and professional pundit, Harold Kopis. This was the first time that the public was able to see any photos or videos regarding the case. The video of this segment is available on our Patreon public feed. I highly recommend taking a moment to watch this approximately 7-minute long video if you're interested in those photos and videos. However, most of the segment is too visually dependent to have any value on an audio medium, so we will not play it here. There are two key things to take away from the segment. The first is that CNN showed 3 separate photos of shoes. They have been mentioned a couple of times previously, but shoes played a significant role in KJ's death. He had fallen into the mat while he was reaching for a pair of gym shoes that he shared with another student that they kept in there for convenience. But which shoes were they? One photo, taken near the mats, showed a lone black and white shoe in a pool of blood, but with no blood on the visible part of the shoe. Another photo, taken elsewhere in the gym, showed a dark shoe with bright orange laces and what looks like brownish-red droplet stains. Jackie and Kenneth say, with no ambivalence, the stains are blood, but the broadcast states that investigators had already determined the substance on the shoe was not blood. The last photo was of KJ's feet, wearing only socks from the perspective of the top of the rolled-up mat. It contained a pair of white, gray, and orange Nike shoes nestled in the space behind his knees. The second I will discuss after this clip.
Hey,
Sheriff Prine. Hi. Victor Blackwell, CNN.
Chris Prine.
The Sheriff's Department has denied a cover-up, but we took the Johnsons' concerns to Lowndes County Sheriff Chris Prine.
Got some questions about the Kendrick Johnson case.
I'm not going to discuss that with you.
Why not, sir?
Because our case is closed.
The family has some concerns about why some things were not taken into evidence. There was blood on the wall.
I'm not going to discuss the case with you.
And why is that?
Because I don't want to.
Then, less than a minute after he'd invited us in,
What did you not understand that I said? I'm through talking to you.
he ushered us out.
Thank you, Sheriff Prine.
Prine made a fatal miscalculation in handling the interview the way that he did. The public now sees him as being willfully uncooperative and defensive in relation to the case, which only serves to fuel existing conspiratorial notions as well as make a poor first impression on the national stage. KJ's 18th birthday would have been October 10th, 2013. He would have been in his junior year of high school, playing football and trying to impress Florida State University if things had been different on January 10th. Instead of watching their beloved KJ blow out his candles, the family held a press conference outside the Lowndes County Judicial Complex to announce that their request to view the surveillance footage, which would have shown how KJ had entered the gym, was denied. Benjamin Crump spoke at this press conference, having recently officially become another attorney acting for the case. Benjamin Crump is an extremely well-known civil rights attorney who has worked on cases where police brutality and civil rights violations were involved, including Trayvon Martin and George Floyd. He had previously spoken early in the investigation outside of his capacity as an attorney about a rumor that had started circulating on social media that KJ's fingernails had been cut all the way down to the cuticle. Crump claimed this had been done, obviously, to hide evidence that might have been under his fingernails. Now, months later, Crump reemerged alongside the family at this press conference. He brought up the organs being missing and newspaper being stuffed into KJ's body, and stated that he thought the refusal to give up the videotape, as well as the missing organs, were proof of a conspiracy to hide evidence of murder in KJ's death. In response, on October 14, 2013, a call to action was made in the Valdosta Daily Times letters to the editor section for the sheriff to step up and start telling people what happened. Up to that point, the sheriff had not really addressed the public after the first day, allowing his lieutenant, Stride Jones, to be the spokesperson. On October 22nd, Benjamin Crump and Shaveen King held another press conference to announce that they had filed a civil petition in Lowndes County Superior Court to have a coroner's inquest opened into the cause of KJ's death. In the press conference, Crump and King cited the contradictory autopsy reports as the basis for a coroner's inquest being needed. They also revisited their previous grievance about the school withholding security footage. They asserted that there should have been a camera that captured the mats where KJ was supposed to have fallen in, and that footage had been intentionally kept from them. Quote, "If the sheriff's investigation is correct, if he climbed into that wrestling mat, we will see it with our own eyes. But if that is not the case, as we suspect it is not, then we will see that." Something to keep in mind for later before we jump into the October heavy hitters. On October 18, 2013, Reverend Floyd Rose offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of a suspect in the KJ Johnson case. The reward money was put up by an anonymous donor under the condition that the reward would be available for 90 days and returned to him if nobody had claimed it by then.
A $10,000 reward now being offered in the Kendrick Johnson case by the Valdosta-Lowndes County Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Reverend Floyd Rose, the president of the organization, says the $10,000 reward was given to them anonymously. Rose says the offer is good for 90 days for information that could lead to an arrest, but after that, the money will be returned to the donor. Kendrick Johnson was found dead in a rolled-up gym mat in January at Lowndes High School. His death was ruled an accident by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, but a second autopsy done by a private pathologist suggests foul play was involved. Rose says the Southern Christian Leadership Conference doesn't know what happened and hasn't taken a position on the case.
Well, I believe that people sometimes will give up their mothers for money. And I think that this should have been done a long time ago. It has not been done, and we're doing it now because we believe that there's somebody out there who knows something.
Floyd Rose says the reward is an effort to bring closure to the Johnson family and calm the community. He says any information received will be given to the Johnson family attorney and the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Georgia.
If you were paying attention earlier, you may remember that I mentioned the Johnsons getting $8,000 for reward money in May of this year as well. We'll revisit the topic of rewards in a future episode and provide more details then. On Halloween 2013, several important events occurred. First, the Southern Circuit Judge Harry J. Altman ordered the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office to release previously redacted and omitted materials that were not included in the family's open records request for all information relating to their son's case. This was after hearing Crump's petition in closed chambers. Altman also ordered the release of the hard-won school video and unredacted versions of all the investigative reports. In response to this victory, Crump said they were, quote, "one step closer to getting to the truth." Kenneth Johnson added,
"I knew this was going to be hard because this is Lowndes County. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we'll be there."
Second, in an email interview with the Valdosta Daily Times, when questioned about the order to release the previously unreleased evidence, Sheriff Prine stated that he stood by his investigation completely, that he stood by the GBI's autopsy reports, and that even Chris Sperry, the state chief medical examiner, had said that he would stake his reputation on the accuracy of the findings in that autopsy, adding that he would welcome a DOJ review so that this could finally be put to rest. Third, Reverend Floyd Rose and Lee Touchton of the SCLC and NAACP announced that they had finished their investigation, and they were confident in saying that the death of KJ Johnson had just been an accident. And lastly, right when it seemed the Johnsons were running out of allies, the Department of Justice's Michael Moore, U.S. Attorney for Georgia Middle District, announced that he was opening an investigation into the KJ Johnson case.
Huddled around a portable television on the South Georgia street corner where they've staged an 8-month sit-in, the family of Kendrick Johnson watched the announcement they've been waiting for.
I am of the opinion that a sufficient basis exists for my office to conduct a formal review of the facts and investigation surrounding the death of Kendrick Johnson.
Hallelujah! Thank you, Jesus! Thank you, Jesus!
It's the second big victory for Kendrick's family. On Wednesday, a judge ordered Lowndes County Sheriff's Office to hand over its full investigative file, including the surveillance video from inside the gym where Kendrick died. Barbara English is Kendrick's grandmother.
I'm so happy, and I know we trust in the Lord, and we just hadn't been down here rallying for 32 weeks for nothing.
U.S. Attorney Michael Moore has called in the FBI to assist his office's investigation and to get answers to several basic questions in the teen's January death.
First, what was the cause of Mr. Johnson's death? Second, was Mr. Johnson's death the result of a crime? Third, if Mr. Johnson's death was the result of a crime, who committed that crime?
Kendrick's parents never believed the local sheriff's explanation that Kendrick suffocated after squeezing his 19-inch shoulders into the 14.5-inch center of a rolled gym mat to reach for a shoe in the middle of a school day. Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson and their attorney spoke with CNN's Wolf Blitzer moments after the announcement.
I believe, indeed, that he was murdered.
Do you have any idea who may have murdered him?
No, I don't. That's what we want to get down to the truth.
The only question we want to know is why are they covering up for whoever killed their son?
Questions about the sheriff's office's investigation have made the Johnsons suspicious, including why these shoes found yards from Kendrick's body were not collected as evidence, and how this blood stain ended up on this wall in the gym, and why investigators never found whose blood it was. And questions have also lingered about the state's autopsy. The official cause of death was positional asphyxia. Kendrick was suffocated by his own body weight, but a second autopsy, paid for by the Johnsons, found Kendrick died as the result of unexplained, apparent non-accidental blunt force trauma, a blow to the neck.
Who do we want? KJ!
Hundreds have rallied for months for answers, and Moore says he's received calls from many of the Johnson supporters.
I appreciate the depth of those concerns, but at this time, what we need are people with facts and knowledge of the circumstances surrounding Mr. Johnson's death to present those to us.
In a statement to CNN, the attorney for the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office writes in part, while Sheriff Prine has every confidence that his officer's investigation was handled with the necessary diligence to assure that all leads were examined and exhausted, he welcomes the U.S. Attorney's further review of the case.
Justice for KJ is coming!
Kendrick's family is grateful for the investigation, but they call it a stepping stone. They say their push for answers will continue.
Got to continue to fight on, because justice is done for KJ.
This announcement refreshed media interest into the KJ Johnson story tenfold, especially CNN. KJ was once again headline news, and all the questions surrounding the case were repeated over and over again for those of you just tuning in. On November 8th, CNN reported the existence of multiple coroner's reports. It turned out that Coroner Wilbur Watson had actually created two separate coroner's reports. The first one, which he had not actually submitted, was more of a rage dump than a coroner's report, and focused primarily on his feelings being hurt because the investigators were not respecting his authority. The second one, the official one, was more professional, except that, apparently, Watson had not signed it. In their report, CNN read excerpts from the one that had not been submitted.
So you got a new document from the coroner who was involved in Kendrick's case. What did you find out?
Well, Anderson, you know, the Johnsons really wanted to get some details from that video, that blurry video you just showed, about how this investigation was handled. They say it was bungled at best, used as a cover-up at the very worst. Well, we now have details from an official on the scene, the coroner, Bill Watson, about that investigation. Here it is. It's coroner's death investigation report. I'm going to read from it. He writes, the investigative climate was very poor to worse when I arrived on the scene. The body had been noticeably moved. The scene had been compromised, and there was no cooperation from law enforcement at the scene. He goes on to say, Anderson, that information necessary for my lawful investigation was withheld. Now, this is one version of the coroner's death investigation report. This is another. This one was sent to us as a result of an open records request from the coroner's office, and it's signed and dated. This copy was given to us in May by the sheriff's office, and again last week as a result of that law enforcement. It does not have the description that I just read, nor is it signed by the coroner. Two versions of the same report.
Wait a minute. I have not heard of that. This is stunning. There are two different versions of the same document, and the official one that the police and others have given you doesn't have any of what the coroner said about compromised crime scenes, about lack of cooperation from law enforcement. It's basically a completely kind of whitewashed version. Is that right?
Exactly. There are two versions, and the version that does not have the description was given to us twice by the sheriff's office. Initially when we asked for documents in May, and then again just last week as a result of that law enforcement. So of course, we called the attorney who represents both the sheriff and the coroner to ask Well, is the description true? Which information was withheld? Why are there two versions? And what's the response from the sheriff's office? Well, this is the statement he sent us as a response to our request. I'm going to read it to you. In light of the U.S. Attorney's review of this matter, the Lowndes County Sheriff and the Lowndes County Coroner will not comment further on this case. They will fully cooperate and respond to all inquiries of the United States Attorney. So no response and an indication they won't be responding to our questions in the future.
I mean, the best possible explanation, just I can think of off the top of my head, is that they're basically just trying to cover their incompetent investigation, according to the coroner. But then you could also say that they're actually trying to hide something beyond just an incompetent investigation.
Well, once we found these two documents and saw the differences, again, this just given to us last week, and this one in just a few days as well, two versions, but we wanted to give them the opportunity to explain.
Sure.
No explanation offered.
The hours of surveillance video you talked about that the family has asked a judge to get involved with, how so? I mean, how do they want that?
Well, the attorneys say that they believe that this video has been tampered with. They believe it's been edited, and that one angle that shows the mat in the corner, they believe that has been intentionally blurred. You can't see the tops of the mats. Of course, that's where they say that Kendrick climbed in. They are planning to file a lawsuit to ask a judge to take custody of the original hard drive from the school district so that they can hire a forensic expert in computers to determine if it's been tampered, if there are elements that were recorded and were either edited or omitted in the passage of this information to the sheriff's office, and then, of course, to the family and to CNN.
Well, I mean, we don't know any evidence about editing on these tapes, but clearly editing of those documents, you have two different documents. I mean, that's just stunning to me.
This is the entire statement that Watson wrote in his first report, which he did not submit.
I was not notified of this death until 15:45 hours. The investigative climate was very poor to worse when I arrived on the scene. The body had been noticeably moved. The scene had been compromised and there was no cooperation from law enforcement at the scene. Furthermore, the integrity of the evidence bag was compromised on January 13, 2013 by opening the sealed bag and exhibiting the dead body to his father. I do not approve of the manner this case was handled. Not only was the scene compromised, the body was moved. The integrity was breached by opening a sealed body bag. Information necessary for my lawful investigation was withheld. Signed January 13, 2013.
Now that the surveillance had been ordered released by the court, it wasn't long before CNN was able to acquire it through FOIA and began releasing video on November 22nd. All the hungry audience saw on the unanalyzed footage was a 3-second video of KJ crossing the gym floor and walking towards the corner, and a bunch of unmarked clips of students appearing and disappearing in the gym. Without a proper analysis and explanation of the way the video system recorded, as well as the way the data is stored, the video clips appear scattered and were misconstrued as being doctored.
We are Kendrick Johnson. That's my child, and we're going to fight till it's all over, until we get the truth. That's all we've ever asked for, was the truth about what happened to Kendrick Johnson.
Jacqueline Johnson and her husband Kenneth hope to find that truth in the hundreds of hours of surveillance video recorded the day sheriff's investigators say the 17-year-old died. Look carefully. There he is, in the white t-shirt and jeans, carrying a yellow folder. The Johnsons now have this video as the result of a lawsuit. CNN filed its own motion to get access to all the video. Investigators in Lowndes County, Georgia, told the Johnsons and their attorneys that Kendrick climbed into a gym mat reaching for this shoe and that his death was an accident.
They know their child did not climb into a wrestling mat, get stuck, and die. Where is that video?
The sheriff's office says that moment was not recorded. The Johnsons also question moments in the surveillance video like this one. Kendrick is seen running in the gym, and then another image appears showing other students. It jumps from one moment to another. The Johnsons' attorneys say they can't tell from the surveillance video what happened to Kendrick and when the other students entered.
We don't have any time code with which to synchronize the events that are shown in the video.
Either the camera did this on their own, or a human being interacted to make this camera do these things.
An attorney for Lowndes County Schools tells CNN what we produced to the sheriff is a raw feed with no edits. The attorney for Lowndes County Sheriff's Office tells CNN, my client has confirmed that the video was not altered or edited by anyone within the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office.
We believe that somebody corrupted this video because it just does not make sense to us.
So who's right? To find out, we took our copy of the video provided to CNN by the attorney for the sheriff's office to an expert. We brought the hard drive more than 2,300 miles here to Spokane, Washington, to deliver it to the leading expert in forensic video analysis, Grant Fredericks. He's a former police officer, a consultant for the U.S. Department of Justice, and a contract instructor at the FBI Academy in Quantico. We are here to get an answer. Has the surveillance footage been altered?
Those files are not original files. They're not something that an investigator should rely on for the truth of the video.
CNN hired Fredericks' company, Forensic Video Solutions, to analyze the surveillance video.
The first thing that the attorneys and the family were concerned about, they didn't see a timestamp, but you found one.
Yes.
How?
Well, the timestamp is in another stream of video, so you have to be able to access it using special codecs. So you have to really know where to find it, but it's there. Once the timestamp is located, you can then begin to make sense of it and begin to track people.
By piecing together the time codes, Fredericks' team found more than 18 minutes of surveillance showing Kendrick on January 10th, starting at 7:31 a.m. as he entered school, ending the last time he was seen alive at 1:09 p.m. in the gym.
The motion video that we're looking at here and the fact that we skip time periods when there's no motion is very common. So I'm not really concerned about that part of it.
But what about the blurred image, the only angle that shows the corner where Kendrick Johnson was found dead?
The Johnsons and their attorneys believe that this was intentionally blurred to hide something. What does your expertise tell you?
Yeah, this has not been intentionally blurred. This is likely, the camera itself has probably been hit and the lens has been pushed out of focus for some reason. If you look very closely, you can see the defined lines that are inherent in digital video. Those lines are still intact, so they have not been blurred. Therefore, it was actually the lens that's blurred. The blurriness actually has the defined lines. So this is clearly just a blurred lens.
Clarity about the blur, the timestamp revealed, and an explanation for the jumpy video, which made the Johnsons and their attorneys suspicious the video had been edited. But Fredericks has a bigger concern.
But this video is not the best evidence. It's been changed and altered so that we are missing information, and what we have been provided is not the best quality.
Altered by copying, but also raising questions about whether everything was copied. CNN has hired Grant Fredericks and his team at Forensic Video Solutions to analyze the hundreds of hours of surveillance from Lowndes High School. Although he does not believe the jumpy video is the result of editing, he says there are some other major problems.
Those files are not original files. They're not something that an investigator should rely on for the truth of the video. They've been altered in a number of ways, primarily in image quality, and likely in dropped information loss. There are also a number of files that are corrupted because they've not been processed correctly and they're not playable. So I can't say why they were done that way, but they were not done correctly and they were not done thoroughly. So we're missing information.
Fredericks says that's likely due to how investigators acquired the surveillance video.
Right now, what they've done is they have left it up to the school district to define what it is they want to provide the police. And I think that probably is a mistake.
According to Lowndes County Sheriff's Office incident reports, a detective watched a portion of the surveillance video the day Kendrick Johnson was found. Then he asked the school board's information technology worker for a copy of the surveillance video for the entire wing of the school with the old gym for the last 48 hours. 5 days later, that IT worker provided a hard drive, and according to the incident report, the detective verified it contained the requested surveillance video.
So the investigator's responsibility is to acquire the entire digital video recording system and then have their staff define what they want to obtain. You don't want somebody who might be party to the responsibility to make the decision as to what they provide the police.
And after hours of analysis, Fredericks questions whether Lowndes County Schools provided all of the surveillance video from the old gym to investigators.
There is a whole of time where none of the cameras provide any record that I've been provided.
Fredericks has all the camera angles and all the video released by the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office.
There are 4 cameras in the gym that records motion from when the lights turn on in the morning until when the lights are turned off at night, except for the area of interest.
The moments before Kendrick Johnson enters the gym. Look at what happens to the recordings from these 4 cameras in the gym. The time is recorded with the video. The first camera captures images from the start of the day until 12:04 p.m. Then, nothing. It picks up again at 1:09 p.m. There's consistent surveillance from the second camera until 11:05 a.m. Then it stops and picks up again more than 2 hours later at 1:15 p.m. The third camera also drops at 11:05 a.m. It picks up again at 1:16 p.m. And from the final camera, there's surveillance until 12:04 p.m., no recording for more than an hour, then it picks up again at 1:09 p.m.
I would absolutely expect there to be some record of that activity, and we don't have any here.
Here's why Fredericks would have expected the motion-activated system to record during that time. During that hour and 5 minutes, several students are seen walking into and out of the old gym from the surveillance camera just outside the gym door. We count 7 male students, and 3 of them walk into the gym within 3 minutes prior to Kendrick Johnson walking in.
I can't tell you whether there was no information recorded in the digital video system, or whether somebody made an error and didn't capture it, or whether somebody just didn't provide it.
When surveillance in the gym resumes at 1:09, we see just these few frames of Kendrick Johnson running in the gym. Here's that moment from all of the cameras in the gym, although there's a record from only 2, and the camera just outside the door. Notice, the hall camera timestamp appears to be 10 minutes behind, and there's no confirmation either time matches the exact time of day. It is the last time his image is captured on video. For the next hour, there are multiple gaps in the video surveillance in the gym.
And that is crucial. It's a really important time.
Well, it really is the only option to answer the question, really what happened.
And there's no video showing the initial discovery of a body in the gym. The next time we see Kendrick Johnson is the following day when he's being wheeled out of the gym in a body bag.
Do you believe it's a coincidence that that time period in the gym is missing?
Oh boy. Investigators are always suspicious and should be suspicious. And it's suspicious that that time period is not there. So yes, I would be suspicious. And until I have the digital video system in my hand, until I can say, or an investigator can say, everything is intact, this was what's recorded, I would still be highly suspicious of this.
So after fighting for months on a city street corner and in the county courthouse to get the surveillance video, Kendrick Johnson's parents still do not know who was in the gym before Kendrick ran in, nor who, if anyone, was there or what happened in those moments after.
Grant Frederick's statement about there being an hour of missing footage, as well as Victor Blackwell introducing the notion that the video appeared, quote, suspicious, and posing the question that it could have been edited, provided enough sustenance to satisfy the audience's cravings for conspiracy. On December 11th, the Johnsons filed a complaint with the Secretary of State's office in Georgia, who is responsible for regulating funeral homes, against Harrington's funeral home, the folks that provided KJ's burial service at no charge to the grieving Johnson family. In the complaint, the Johnson family had claimed that Harrington Funeral Home removed and destroyed their son's organs in order to destroy evidence. They also claimed that the funeral home was complicit in destroying their son's clothing, which was never located, and that KJ's fingernails had been cut, likely to destroy evidence. I do want to reinforce that when I say the Johnson family, I do not include Eddie Tooley, who you'll find suddenly absent from the family's campaign moving forward. On an unrelated note, Eddie Tooley passed away in September of 2023 and was put to rest by his longtime friend, Anthony Harrington.
This morning, an update on the investigation into the death of Kendrick Johnson. The family of the Valdosta teen found dead at Lowndes High School earlier this year has now filed a complaint against the funeral home that handled the final arrangements. The family says Harrington's Funeral Home in Valdosta mishandled Kendrick's body. During a second autopsy ordered by the family, it was discovered that 17-year-old's organs were missing and his body stuffed with newspaper. The parents now want the funeral home, medical examiner, and anyone who handled their son's body to be investigated.
Fingernails go missing. His clothes go missing. All of his internal organs go missing. From the top of his head down to his pelvis are missing. It can't be all this a coincidence. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, Johnson's parents and supporters plan to rally at the Georgia State Capitol today to mark the 11-month anniversary of his death. The teen's body was found rolled up in a wrestling mat inside the high school gym last January.
On December 21st, 2013, it was reported in the Valdosta Daily Times that Michael Moore had subpoenaed Lowndes High School to get the original hard drives that had the footage from when KJ went missing. As Blackwell and Frederick said, the footage shown on CNN was a copy and not the original. The only way to definitively determine if the footage was doctored would be to obtain the originals. The school had been storing the hard drives in a vault since January 11, 2013. This was the first thing that the public had heard about since the DOJ investigation was opened in October. In this episode, we've covered the events of the first year following the tragic death of Kendrick Johnson. Join us next episode where we will bring you up to date on the KJ Johnson case as far as the public saw. Thanks for listening.